You have seen the marches, the banned banners, the arrests. But seriously, did anyone ever stop to ask what the actual plan is? I asked one protester. They said, "It is about showing you will not be silenced, no matter the cost." Right, so mass arrests and a criminal record. That is the strategy now. Brilliant. Really helping Gaza from a holding cell in London. That brief exchange, honestly, it lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it told me everything I needed to know. 2025 has been absolutely defined by the noise of protest, a constant drumbeat of demands and disruptions. We saw environmental groups like Just Stop Oil literally disband, claiming victory, while other movements became so extreme they were outlawed entirely. Yet, when you actually pull back the curtain, most of the storylines we are being fed are nothing short of fairy tales. Tonight, I am not here to shout or to waffle. We are going to unpick the 5 biggest whoppers the hard-left activist scene has been selling you all year long. No studio theatrics, no pointless shouting match, just cold hard numbers, the raw footage, and the undeniable receipts. We are cutting through the noise to get to the truth, because frankly, you deserve better than protest fan fiction. Lie number 1. We are a growing electoral force. They chant it in the streets. They tweet it relentlessly. They even plaster it across their leaflets. The left is on the rise. It is a powerful, almost intoxicating slogan. But let us hit the reality check button, shall we? The May 2025 UK elections told a brutally different story. The big winner was not a coalition of socialist parties. It was Reform UK, which scooped up a staggering 41% of all seats up for election, gaining control of 10 councils. Meanwhile, if you tally up the combined vote share of every single socialist outfit outside of the Labour Party, the Greens, the various Trotskyist factions, the whole lot, it barely makes a dent. An August 2025 poll found that while a fifth of people might consider a new party from the likes of Jeremy Corbyn, that is just a protest vote, not a winning machine. So, why all the swagger? While the chest thumping and the declarations of imminent revolution? Because electoral failure, while inconvenient, is not nearly as damaging as a lack of clout. And clout, my friends, is an incredibly addictive drug. Claiming momentum, even when polls show the resurge is on the populist right, unlocks those coveted media slots and keeps those donation buttons glowing. The actual game for many of these groups is not about winning Downing Street. It's about brand building, about maintaining a perception of relevance and power. So, next time you see a banner proudly declaring, "Power to the people," take a moment and ask yourself, how many actual councillors did they manage to elect this past May? The honest answer? Pretty darn close to 0. It's a harsh truth, but it's one we need to face if we are to understand the true motivations behind the noise. Line number 2. Our protests are always peaceful. Peaceful is a spectrum, not just a slogan, as the saying goes, and it's a distinction often conveniently blurred. Tell that to the Jewish community in Manchester, grieving after a deadly synagogue attack, only to see pro-Palestine marches go ahead days later against the pleas of police and the Prime Minister. Or how about police officers who have been forced to carry out thousands of arrests at these events? In just 2 recent protests this autumn, over 1,422 people were arrested, the majority for supporting a proscribed organisation. That's not a peaceful gathering. That's a mass criminalisation event. This year has been riddled with charges for everything from obstruction and criminal damage to conspiracy to commit a public nuisance. Now, blocking a road or waving an inflammatory placard might avoid a direct fistfight, sure, but it absolutely, unequivocally, weaponizes intimidation and chaos. It turns the everyday lives of ordinary people into collateral damage. When your primary tactic involves causing widespread disruption or aligning with groups so extreme they get banned by the state, non-violence becomes a technicality, a semantic fig leaf, rather than a genuine virtue. It is a distinction that is lost on the worker who just lost a day's wages because their city centre was shut down or the family made to feel unsafe in their own neighbourhood. The impact, the real-world consequence, often feels anything but peaceful to those on the receiving end. And that, in itself, is a form of aggression, just without the physical blows. Lie number 3. We are united for workers. Spend an afternoon on almost any picket line these days, and you won't have to look hard to spot the deep, festering fracture lines running through the so-called united left. On one side, you will see activists waving banners demanding an immediate end to all fossil fuels. Just a few feet away, another faction carries signs declaring, "Protect North Sea jobs." It is a microcosm of the broader ideological chasm. The socialist parties themselves cannot even agree on fundamental issues, like whether women's long-established gender-based rights should trump gender self-identification. This is not just academic squabbling. It leads to an endless proliferation of splinter groups, each one claiming to be the true vanguard of the working class. It is a circular firing squad, not a unified movement. And what about the very workers they swear to defend? Hauling from August 2025 painted a stark truth. An overwhelming 81% of Britons believe society is deeply divided, with the primary tension being between immigrants and the British-born, or the hard left obsesses over pronouns and abstract theories. They are failing to speak to the real-world anxieties of the public about the economy and public services. That is a devastating indictment. It turns out that ideological purity, no matter how passionately articulated, tends to bounce right off the very real, very pressing concern of a mortgage bill or rising grocery costs. Until the hard left can somehow resolve its increasingly bitter culture war, civil war, the crucial working class vote is going to remain firmly, frustratingly, up for grabs. They are too busy fighting each other, fight for those they claim to represent. Number 4. We are the engine of progress. From the suffragettes to the battle for the minimum wage, big shifts rarely happen quietly. But here is the critical distinction. Those movements understood the necessity of building majorities in Parliament to codify change into law. Right now, the loudest voices on the hard left treat compromise as treason. Look at Palestine action. Their tactics of property damage and disruption did not lead to policy change. They led to the group being proscribed as a terrorist organization in the summer of 2025. Being banned is the polar opposite of progress. It is being removed from the conversation entirely. It is an absolutist mindset that leaves no room for negotiation. Real, tangible progress moves through policy papers, through legislative debates, through the slow, often tedious process of building consensus, not just through placards and criminal damage. Yet for many within the activist elite, it seems the dopamine hit of uncompromising absolutism is far more appealing than the grueling, incremental work of governance. The irony here is truly profound. The harder they push, the more extreme their tactics become, the more they actually give politicians the perfect excuse to legislate against them and ignore their demands. The net effect is not a surge forward. It is a frustrating, self-defeating stall. They claim to be the engine of progress, but too often, they end up being the handbrake. Number 5. We are independent from party politics. Do not be fooled by the rhetoric of people power and grassroots movements. For all major demonstration we have seen this year has effectively doubled as a recruitment fair. You will spot socialist alternative stickers plastered on lampposts, front groups handing out clipboards to eager volunteers, and behind the scenes, WhatsApp admins busily logging who can be bussed to the next constituency meeting. Is the pipeline a carefully constructed pathway from street marcher to candidate to councillor? And then there is the money. Let's talk about the integrity of our political finance system. In early 2025, it was revealed that the Electoral Commission itself had been the target of a successful Chinese state-sponsored cyber attack, obtaining details of people in electoral register. While the Commission continues its work, this shocking breach exposes the vulnerability of the entire system. When our democratic gatekeepers are this exposed, how can we have any faith in the transparency of fringe campaign groups that use opaque funding methods? Independent only if you completely ignore the way-oiled pipeline from marcher to candidate, and crucially, the systemic vulnerabilities that could allow dark money to keep this entire machine humming along. This is not spontaneous uprising. It's a highly organized and often covert political operation. If these myths are sounding familiar, if you are nodding along, then do me a favor, whack that share button and subscribe to our channel and social media pages. Let's get this out there, so the algorithm stops force-feeding everyone protest fanfiction. And hey, if you reckon I missed a lie or have another observation, drop it in the comments below. Just keep it civil, alright? No caps lock wars, please. Let us have a proper conversation. Let's zoom out, because the implications of these pervasive lies stretch far beyond mere political posturing. When truth becomes optional, when facts are treated as inconvenient obstacles, then intimidation becomes acceptable. A government security review in June 2025 issued a stark warning that for the first time in years, the UK must prepare for direct attacks on its own soil, noting that hostile states and their proxies increasingly use intimidation, espionage, sabotage, and other forms of democratic interference. A poll in August 2025 found that 7 in 10 Britons are now concerned about the potential for political violence. That is not activism. That is cultivating a climate of fear, a chilling effect on free speech and democratic participation. This is not some abstract academic point. It is a history lesson we ignore at our peril. Throughout 2025, we saw violent anti-immigration riots where police were injured and dozens arrested. This is the inevitable result when the radical flank, on any side, shrugs off democratic norms. When a hard left consistently normalizes lawbreaking and chips away at public order, the electoral rebound is not socialist paradise. Oh no, it is a populist right backlash, promising order and stability at any price, a trend already seen in the May local elections. If you lose the argument by abandoning democratic principles, you risk losing the country to forces far less palatable. The stakes could not be higher. Thankfully, some of us still fundamentally believe you can fight injustice without trashing institutions or alienating half the population. We can insulate homes, build next-generation nuclear power, and cut energy bills for struggling families, all without vandalizing property or getting proscribed as a terrorist group. We can have robust, respectful debates about gender policy without branding anyone who holds a different opinion as a bigot. And yes, we can find ways to fund social care without pretending some failed state is an economic blueprint for success. The path to genuine, lasting change is often incredibly boring. It involves the painstaking work of policy papers, the grind of local organizing, and brace yourselves, winning actual elections. Progress takes years of consistent effort and compromise. It does not happen through a single headline-grabbing stunt. The crucial question facing the hard left today is this: will they finally trade the fleeting adrenaline rush of the lie, the immediate gratification of performative outrage, for the hard graft of the doable? Would they engage with the practicalities of governing? Honestly, do not hold your breath. The allure of the spectacular, it seems, is still too strong. Remember the 5 fundamental lies we have just torched: the illusion of electoral strength, the myth of guaranteed peace, the fantasy of worker unity, the delusion of unstoppable progress, and the outright lie of political independence. Strip away the bombast, peel back the layers of slogans, and what are you left with? A shrinking, increasingly squabbling subculture, seemingly addicted to the applause of their echo chamber and utterly allergic to the cold, hard arithmetic of reality. Keep your eyes open, keep your skepticism dialed high, and if someone starts screaming about overthrowing the state at a protest, well, maybe just walk on by and let the police handle the inevitable arrests. Honestly, you have got better things to do, like, perhaps, subscribing to this channel so we can keep cutting through all the noise and nonsense together. Because the truth, even when it is uncomfortable, is always worth fighting for.